What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave. Please subscribe to the channel. Okay, this is gonna be one of two videos because they sort of have one to do with the other. Terrence Crawford, all right, not officially, but Terrence Crawford is rumored to be facing Chris Eubank Jr. There's a little bit of confirmation there because Chris Eubank Jr. actually retweeted, or I'm sorry, he not retweeted, but posted it on his Instagram story that I guess confirming that this fight may happen. All right. So we just got to wait and see. Again, this is not confirmed. Canelo and Jaime Munguia is confirmed. I'm going to talk about that in the next video. All right. But Chris Eubank Jr. may be Terrence Crawford's next opponent. Now, Chris is fighting currently campaigning at middleweight. All right. His last fight was against Liam Smith, where he won the rematch and stopped Liam Smith in a rematch after losing the first fight by getting stopped. Bo Mack was actually his trainer. Bo Mack, the trainer of Terrence Crawford, was his trainer for that fight. That's the first time him training or being trained by Bo Mack, right? So Bo Mack is obviously Terrence Crawford's coach and longtime friends. He's been there forever. So obviously, if they were to fight, Bo Mack would be with Terrence Crawford, right? As far as where the fight would be, I don't know. I'm assuming it would be here in America because I can't see. I don't know if Bo Mack is even allowed to go back in British soil after the gun charge out there. So I really don't know how that's going to play out, right? But I'm here to talk more about the fight itself. Now, this is where I stand, and I'm going to say the same with Canelo when I get to him in my next video. There are fights that I want. There's an order of fights that I want from these guys. These guys are Canelo's the face of boxing, but Crawford is one of the top fighters out in boxing, not just pound for pound, but now he's also one of the faces of boxing, along with Tank and other fighters like Fury, Joshua, etc. Terrence Crawford is a top tier fighter, and Chris Eubank is a big fighter in the UK. Not so much in America, but he is a name, all right? He is a bigger name than a lot of fighters, right? Not here in America so much, but in the UK, yes, he is. What I wanted from Crawford is I wanted to fight with Jaron Ennis at 147. That's pretty much the only fight I want at 147 at this point. Now that he beat Errol Spence, that was the ultimate fight for me. Now that he destroyed Errol Spence, did not want to see a rematch. Wanted him to, if not stay at 147 and fight with Jaron Ennis, I would want him to fight Tim Tszyu at 154, which is probably even a bigger fight. Tim Tszyu is, to me, is the best fighter at 154. Jamel, I don't know where he's at. I don't know what he's doing. I don't even know if he's holding any of his titles at this point. So I would say Tim Tszyu is that guy at 154 right now. I know no one's beaten Jamel at 154, but I don't know if he's even active. I know he's champion at recess for one of his titles, and the rest of them were vacated. All right, so Tim Tszyu is that guy at 154. So we got Jaron Ennis. We got Tim Tszyu at 154. At 160, I personally wasn't asking for any fights there. Chris Eubank at 160 is the biggest name, but Chris Eubank is not holding the title at 160. That would just be a fight against a name, What I think what happened here is I think Crawford did want to fight Jamel at 154 because he wanted to fight for Undisputed 4 in another division. He lost interest after the loss to Canelo, and now Jamel is not even Undisputed anymore. Then you have Tim Tszyu, who I believe Crawford probably would have faced because Tim Tszyu does have a name, especially in Australia. That could have been a stadium fight out there. But Tim Tszyu is fighting Keith Thurman at the end of the month. Tim Tszyu probably, if he is to beat Thurman or the winner of that fight, won't be available and probably until the summertime, So now we're at 160. And you know me, I'm not a fan of guys moving up 2 divisions or so to fight other fighters. I'm just not. I think that's too much of a gap. But Chris Eubank is not the best fighter at 160 to me. I think Yanibek might be the best. Jamal, if you want to still consider him 160, I know he holds a title there, but he hasn't fought at the division in a very long time. So, you know what I mean? Like, I really know. I think Yanibek right now, Aleem Kanuli, is the best fighter at 160. I think he's the most dangerous fighter at 160, but who wants to fight him? Because no one wants to fight him because no one knows who he is. Just diehard boxing fans know who he is. And as much as I would love to see him in a unification match at 160, no one's going to fight him. Everybody's going to move around him, go up in weight, fight the other champions. Yanibek is currently unified, but no one's going to fight him. Let's just be real. It is what it is. It sucks, but no one's really going to fight him. And I wouldn't expect Crawford to fight him. A lot of risk in that fight. Not much of a reward there if you were to win. I just think the gap in size is just a little too big for him. And I feel the same about 168. I said this about the Canelo fight. I know many people believe that Crawford can probably beat Canelo at 168, and that's cool. I think the jump in weight is a little too much. I think Canelo, it's just a little too big for Crawford. I think that's too much. And it's the same with everybody else in the division, I said in one of my lives, one of my more recent lives, that this is even before Floyd said anything. I think it's ridiculous to have the idea, someone said this in my comments, the idea of Crawford fighting David Benavidez is just, or Dave Morrell or something. It's crazy to me. That's just ridiculous. Like Crawford, best boxer to me, best fighter, I think he's number one. No. It's a point where it's just too much. It's too much. These guys' size is a factor in the sport, and you're fighting bigger guys. These guys are not Errol Spence. No disrespect to Spence. Great fighter. But these guys are much bigger than Errol Spence, and they could do more, in my opinion. I think they can do a little bit more. I think Errol Spence was good as a welterweight. But once you start going up in weight and you're not able to outwork these fighters, you know what I mean? And they're able to take your power and push you back. Your advantages, your strengths and advantages won't be a factor in the higher weights. You would really have to rely on your boxing IQ, which Crawford can do. But I think there's limits to that. Chris Eubank, I think Chris Eubank is one of those fights where Crawford is so skilled, I think he can go up and beat a Chris Eubank. I don't think he goes up there and just completely annihilates him like the way some of the people are saying. I see some of the comments. I don't think he totally annihilates him, but I think he wins the fight against Chris Eubank. Again, there wouldn't be any title on the line. I personally think Crawford is still chasing Canelo. Seeing how he can do at 160 against a fighter that's been at 160 for a while and campaigned at 168 for about 5 fights. You got to remember, Chris Eubank Jr. was in the World Boxing Super Series at 168. He did knock out Abdi Yildirim. He did lose to George Groves, but that was a championship fight. He did have an IBO title there. So Chris Eubank would be a test if he's going in that right direction of moving up in weight. But me personally, and I'm only speaking for myself here when I say this, it's not a fight that I really want. It's not a bad fight. Same thing with Canelo. Munguia is not a bad fight. It's a good fight. It's just that I want other fights more. As a fan, I want other fights more, and I also think that other fights would be more competitive. I think Tim Tszyu, Boots are fights that are more competitive, even though they're smaller guys. Just my opinion. You could look at any way you want. I know Chris Eubank is actually coming off his best win, his best performance, in my opinion. I think his rematch against Liam Smith was the best I've ever seen him. Probably has a lot to do with Bomac. Personally, wasn't a great fan of the Roy Jones mix. I think Chris had some of the athletic abilities to do some of the things that Roy was able to do. But overall, I didn't think he really had the IQ. I didn't think he really had the volume. You know what I mean? I just think that, yeah, there was some good in there, but it was some bad in there, you know? But Bomac, it was more straight to a point type of approach, being aggressive, letting your hands go, not looking flashy, just getting straight to the point. And that's why I liked him in the Liam Smith fight, in the rematch. The rematch was how the first fight should have went. But, you know, taking a Roy approach, you know, just waiting on the opponent, like luring him in all the time. No, I think Chris Eubank was always good at being like aggressive, you know. Even though he lost to Groves, he was aggressive. He lost to Saunders years ago. He was aggressive, won the second half. You know, James DeGale, he beat him at 168. You saw how he fought in that fight. He fought like an animal in that fight. I think that's what Chris Eubank needs to bring. And that would be a great test for Terence Crawford. But Tim Tszyu would have been a better fight, you know, to me. And I think it would have made people respect it more. It would have been a more respectable fight, you know. Chris Eubank might very well be a tougher fight. Well, we'll never know, you know, because we're basing on these fighters. They're undefeated fighters. You know, they look dangerous and consistently, like Ennis, he's looked dangerous consistently. You might not think he looks that good. You think he's overrated. You know, you think he's Doug Bud. That's cool. But stylistically, I love the matchup because Boots is extremely athletic. He can switch. He's powerful. He's bigger. So, you know, he's younger. He's fresh. He's undefeated. We haven't really, no real flaws have been exposed, you know, except the Karen fight where he obviously couldn't cut off the ring. But outside of that, no major issues have been exposed yet. And same thing with Tim Tszyu. Yes, we've seen videos and fights where he got dropped and everything, but in his best fights, his most difficult opponents, the best matchups he's been in, he shined the most when he was able to step up. You know, so when you see Chris Eubank, it's like, yes, Chris Eubank is bigger, but is he better than the other two guys that I named? You know, and I think that's why most people are just going to be like, oh, Crawford's going to run through him. I think Crawford will win, but I don't know if Crawford can just run through him because Chris is bigger. He is coming off his best performance, in my opinion. You know, you just never know. You know, can Chris do better than Errol? I think Chris can do better than Errol did in their fight. You know, I think Chris can do some things in there. I know he can, at least, at the very least, one advantage of Chris is that he can at least change his style, because I've seen him fight a few different ways before, you know, so he could at least adjust in some way, you know. I mean, he's been with Bomac. I'm sure he's learned from Bomac. So, you know, I'm sure that helps. Not the number one fight. That's not the fight I was really asking for. But a fight at 160, if you are looking to move up and hope to push yourself closer and closer to a Canelo fight, or if you don't get Canelo ever, you know, who else can you get that are bigger? Maybe this win against Eubank would help you win and prepare you for a Tim Tszyu fight down the line, you know, because Tim Tszyu is at a smaller weight. So if you beat a guy at 160, you know, people that can help you with 154. I really don't know. I don't know what the exact decision is, but all I know is that guys like Crawford, Canelo, these guys are just looking for the big money fights. They're looking for the fights they want at this point in their career. You know, again, they're not a bad fight, but I don't think the fight is as easy as what people was making it seem like. But it wins, but not as easy as he did against Errol. Not in my opinion, especially going up in two weight divisions. Never a fan of these. Normally, you guys know if you guys been here, wasn't a fan of Mikey moving up to fight Errol. Wasn't a fan of ringing down fighting Lomachenko at 130. There's been several two-weight jump up fights that I just didn't really care for. And the outcome never worked. Kell Brook. Again, Kell Brook moving up to fight Triple G. Big mistake. But to be honest with you, Kell Brook fight is always there for Chris Eubank. Conor Ben fight is always there for you, Chris Eubank, especially those two fights. Those are two British fights that you want to have in the UK. Conor Ben, you probably shouldn't even have that fight if it's not in the UK. Unless they're gonna pay you a whole bunch of millions to fight in Saudi Arabia. That's the fight. It's a lot of history behind that fight because of their dads. That's a fight you have in the UK. Kell Brook, that's a fight that can happen anytime because Kell Brook is not even active. So for Chris Eubank, it's a win because he's getting a fight one of the biggest faces in boxing in Terence Crawford. So for him, it's a win. Even though the guy is moving up two divisions to fight you, it's a big fight for Eubank because if Eubank was to win, even though he's 2 divisions bigger, it would still be the best win on his resume. It would be. It would be. It is what it is. All right. So, again, we'll wait until it's officially announced. I'll break it down again. I'm leaning towards Terence Crawford. I'm curious to see where Eubank would have as a coach. But we just got to wait and see how this plays out, Yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the thumbs up, share the video, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.